to the COVID, lead for the after COVID situations, is always looking advices and exchanges like this. And for us, it's so important. I would like really to appreciate your willingness to be part of it. Thanks particularly for Asaf to join us. And Priscilla, Erniana, all the people that are going to join also, thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Irina. And I am Lloyd. I think I know each and every one of us we've met. Yeah, so I think I will just go straight into it. Again, I don't know why I always want to call her Victoria and so many other names. I don't know why. But Christine, who is working with us at the office, she's from Norway. Currently, she's in Norway, also sent her apologies, says she can't make it, she's not feeling well. But she sends her regards, and I'll be sending her the recording and the notes of this meeting, just to inform you, for that matter, that we are recording. And I hope you don't mind, but please let me know if you have any concerns around it. I would like to now look at the reason why we are here. And I'll start by sharing my screen, just to share I hope you've seen it, but it's to share the agenda for the day. And they should have it. We've been talking about trying to fit it to the page, but at the AAY, we've been kind of like experimenting on a new way of developing interventions. We've been thinking through what we've been doing, and we came across the concept of the big idea sessions, which essentially is conversational meetings that we have among staff and with partners, because we are cognizant of our strengths, yes, as the YMCA, as the AAYMCA, but we are cognizant also that we do have some, let me say, blind spots, areas that we are not able to see by ourselves. So we like to invite as many partners as possible. And this all started when we did our strategic plan last year, and decided that let's be having at least monthly sessions, which we call the big idea session. So this is this is the May session, which is based on the theme. We usually give them themes. So the theme for this session is "You Can't Touch This." If you came earlier, I was playing a song sung by the gentleman that you can see. His name is MC Hammer. I used to love MC Hammer when I was younger. He's an excellent dancer and everything. But the most interesting thing, I just picked him because of the theme. You can't touch this. We are going through, as you're all familiar. I hope you're all familiar with the situation right now. Situation that the COVID-19 situation, and what is coming out is that the coming economy, the place where we are going, is going to be an economy of where you're told you can't touch this. You can't touch your face. You can't touch money. You can't touch another person. Yes, there was a report yesterday from the American CDC that said the virus does not, sustain on surfaces so much, but we have been told you can't even touch some surfaces. If you do, you have to sanitize, wash hands, there's that whole shift. And out of it is coming the recognition that there's something called a low-touch economy. So the first thing that we're going to do is just have a brief video that tries to introduce what the low-touch economy is all about. This shall be, kind of like, I'd like us to be familiar with it, to be aware of it, and then we can have a small discussion around it. Then we will probably present, for those of us who are coming for the first time, aspects of what we've done at the AAY so far. We had what we call a chartering process, and there are some documents which I'd like to share with us, some information that we picked from it, and also maybe share with you some key findings, some things we've identified from the other big idea sessions we've had. We've had 2 in the past. And the purpose of this is just to create an ethnography sort of around the process, to look at some of the background data that can be referenced in the process of the engagement. We are aware that we have challenges as the YMCA, and some of these challenges will come out some problems, and some of these problems you will be able to see them. So we will build the basis through this for the big new idea. We are hoping to create a big new idea that will push us forward into the rest of the year. And finally, we could have, we were planning to have a sort of an ideation session, and we'll be experimenting. I heard on Zoom that you can put people into groups. So we'll be experimenting with these groups, and then we'll come back and have a conclusion and a way forward. So there are some tools which we will use to do this. So I'll introduce the tools to us. So up to there, I don't know if there's anyone who has a question who would like some clarification before we go forward. And just to note, let me put my video, just to note that it's a very conversational process. It's not me giving a lecture. We like to just have an open conversation. So that may be the agenda, but we are cognizant of the fact that at the end of the day, we might just go a totally different direction. So for Priscilla, Renaina, and Asaf, who are new to this conversation, please feel free to stop the conversation, to interrupt, ask any questions, and we are happy. It's a very malleable process. It's amorphous, and it just goes by those big thematic or agenda areas. Yeah. So I'm guessing, does anyone have any question up until that point, or anything to add? I'm guessing. Sure. Okay. Anyone else?
I'm good as well, Lloyd. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So I will share my screen with you. And I will share just about 5 minutes of the low-touch economy conversation and a brief introduction. And then from there, we can pick up the conversation. So let me just share my screen. Should be that. And let me know if
Lloyd, there's no sound. I don't know whether it's just me who's not hearing.
Okay. All right. There's no sound, eh?
I'm also not hearing.
Okay. All right. Okay. Just a second. I always joke with the guys in the office that because they tell me I'm the IT guy, and I always tell them if I'm the IT guy, you guys are in a lot of trouble. So let me try and share. I know how to share the yes. There we go. So does it have sound now?
Yeah.
It has sound,
No.
yeah?
I don't.
No, it doesn't have sound.
Oh dear.
Doesn't
Okay. All right. So let me just talk you through it then. The low touch economy, I have the
Lloyd.
presentation. Yeah.
Can I just advise?
Yes.
If you remove first from the sharing,
Okay.
and then you restart, you resume, and at the same time you say you tick on the adjust the video to the screen and also share the sound of the computer, because I've seen
Okay.
that you have shared the sound, but maybe it just needs to be restarted.
Yes, yes. Okay. So just, okay, it's there. I've even seen it's very simple. Okay, it's actually very simple. Let me go back to
exit
now.
from current confinement strategies.
Yeah, nice.
So that's the basic feedback.
Okay. Okay, let me just pull it back a bit and you can start again.
Feel free to share your questions in the chat as Nick will be gathering them and we will answer as many as possible at the end of this presentation. So let's get going. Our point of view is that any viable exit strategy from current lockdowns, in which about half of the world's population is in at the moment, will rely on building a low-touch economy, a low-touch version of the day-to-day interactions that we have with products, services, other people, children going to school and so on. The sooner we succeed in building that low-touch version of that, the sooner we will viably be able to exit from current confinement strategies. What is the basic feedback loop of the low-touch economy? It obviously all starts with the current pandemic and the health measures that are brought to life to control the current pandemic. That's the origin of the whole cycle, and that leads to a number of economic disruptions, both at macro and micro level, and a large number of behavioral shifts amongst consumers in terms of how people interact with each other and change how they interact with businesses, products, and services again. Now, because of this feedback loop, that means that the longer those health measures sustain, the longer the economic disruption and the behavioral shifts sustain as well. So if this was a 1 month thing, then people would probably get back to their old normal quite soon. But because of habit formation, if people repeat on average 21 times a certain behavior, they would sustain it as a habit after that as well. And that is why this is going to be so disruptive to certain buying behaviors and consumer behaviors in general as well. So what most people hope to see is that we could get out of the current confinement policies after a couple of weeks, let's say. What we're looking at here is what we call the first order low touch characteristics, including social distancing, number of hygiene precautions like hand washing, disinfections, travel restrictions, and the limitation of large gatherings, under which most of the current confinement policies resort under those 4. So this is what we're all hoping to see. This is our base case scenario. So going back to a new normal will be a much bumpier path until we are able to reach herd immunity or a vaccine in probably 18 months from now, which would still be a lot faster than the fastest ever developed vaccine, which was 4 years, if I'm not mistaken. So, and in between, we will see an up and downwards movement of to control the pandemic and an up and downward movement of these low touch measurements. Hopefully not in the current lockdown measures, but at least up and down swings. That means all the second order changes, as we've outlined in the feedback loop in terms of economic disruption, as well as on behavioral shifts in how we live and work, will sustain as well. That's the basic premises of the low touch economy. Why are we looking at the base case scenario of up and down swings for the next 18 months? There's a plenitude of studies who are also contradicting each other, so signals are obviously mixed. But if you look at some leading studies, obviously you had the one here on the right side of Imperial College saying that we would be for 2/3 of our time for the coming 18 months in lockdown procedures. Obviously that study has been criticized and is on the extreme side of things, but also Harvard published their study on that about a week ago. And they were also looking at not returning to normal before 2022, or even their worst case scenario was to 2024 if we don't succeed in getting that vaccine sooner on a mass scale. So one point is looking at the studies. The other one is looking at what countries are doing who are a bit more further on the curve than most others. So if we're looking at China, for example, where they are returning to a normal, it's not going back to the old normal. Here you see graphs of what percentage it returns to the 100% pre-corona. And you see that, for example, container freight is only at 69%, box office in terms is just still flat at zero. So if we look at some of those countries, it's not returning to the old normal, but it's returning to a new normal. For example, Chinese cinemas, they were told to close just a week after they reopened. And we see big lockdowns being replaced by dozens of changes to daily life, meaning, for example, excessive cleaning operations. We see apartment buildings being cleaned 25 times a day, restricted access to a lot of buildings, health and security checks everywhere. So that's going to be the low-touch new normal that we're going to be in for an extensive period of time. So we should prepare for that as well as for several years of aftershocks, most likely. So at the bottom here, you see exemplary aftershocks. Obviously, the first one that we are already in is the one of mass unemployment. So in the US, up to 10% and more now of the active population. In some European countries, we're looking at 20 to 30% or even more, mostly in temporary unemployment measures as they exist across continental Europe. And obviously, which might lead to cycles of bankruptcies, credit defaults, and so on. So other potential aftershocks being rise of nationalism. We already see democracies being slightly hollowed out, like in Hungary, the euro, as in all crises, coming under pressure, and a lot of them we might not see coming yet. So on that, I want to open up the chat as well and interact and learn from each other as well. So which other aftershocks are you expecting in the coming year or 2 years? So
Lloyd, we cannot hear you.
Lloyd, you're on mute.
Yes, I was saying, I just want to pause at that place. I was saying at that very low note, so to speak. It sounds very grim, and maybe just to get a response from everyone, what you've heard. This was from another webinar by, they're called the Board of Innovations, and they've done a lot of work on scenarios. I'll come to our own scenarios at the YMCA in a few minutes, but just to get your feedback from what you've heard in terms of that global scenario and what it is that you've heard. So anyone, you can please feel free to feedback on that scenario. Thank you. Anyone? Herinaina, yes, go ahead.
Yes, I'm here. Good. Thank you for the video. Actually, that is for me is a very that is the first time I could see some very clear explanation and very clear anticipation as what I've just seen in the video. And as for me, where I'm living right now, the communication in Madagascar right now is very difficult. There is a lot of communication that didn't help me to really having those kind of analyzing those and such chat anticipation. So that is one very important things for me, seeing how is things might happen. And I really agree with the fact that this reconversion will last more than 18 or 24 months. I really agree with this point. But also something that I would like to know, if I think, and that will be part of our discussion, is how this will impact the social interaction. Because on the video we have talked about the politics. We have even talked about the democracy, the economics, the euro will be down, but for social interaction, how that might be impacted this reconversion. So that is from me, Lord. Thank you.
Okay. And also, Herenaina, one really nice one thing about you, Herenaina. Let me see if I'm not muted. Okay, good. You know, Madagascar has a cure. How is that going along?
That is a good question, Lord. Thank you. And honestly, I don't know how to respond to you for now. The thing is, the thing is, in Madagascar, as we saw, we are heritage a bit some culture from the Asian part, from Indonesia. So most of them you are using herbal tea, herbal cure for many reasons. But the problem this side is that the cure and the herbal is politicized too much. So it's very difficult to bring your own idea on it, of which is good or it. But one thing is that the herbal didn't go through a clinical experimentation.
Okay.
And obviously we didn't have any time to go through the clinical experimentation, because the COVID was been there. So the government has to work very quickly to find the solution. So we didn't have this clinical experimentation, and secondly, we didn't have yet the proof to say that it works or it didn't work. So we are. I'm sure we are still in experimentation right now, but there is a lot of countries in Africa, like Tanzania, Sierra Leone, who have asked some from our country, so we give them. So this is how I can say, yeah.
Okay, interesting. Just a quick one, Priscilla. You're also an entrepreneur, and I'm just curious to hear from you in terms of what you had from the low touch economy, and what your response would be from that aspect of things.
For me personally, I'm feeling with regards to the new normal, Africa is not ready for it yet, and it has a long way regarding to the infrastructures and poverty that is currently happening in Africa. And because people are finding it so hard to adjust to what is the new normal, even when the cases, like in my own country, has not gone up to like how the other African countries have gone up, because we only have 24 cases here, confirmed cases here in the Gambia. But our president 2 days ago has also extended the state of emergency to another 21 days. This has not been welcomed by many people because, one, people need to go out, and this is a new normal that they cannot just adjust to because they have to go feed for themselves, because some people are depending on getting daily income, which is very hard for us that are sitting at home and working, but getting paid at the end of the month, and that's fixed. For us as entrepreneurs, it's changing also our mindset of what is the new normal for us. Some of us that produce certain products are trying to figure out now, if people don't have the luxury of buying some of our products, let us try to look at more innovative ways of producing other things. Like, for example, the European Union and the Youth Empowerment Project in the Gambia has really helped in helping entrepreneurs to start producing standard face mask, which I have also been able to produce through the European Union, the Ymca project. And this is something that, looking at since we started producing, it has increased our income more than what we have been in like in our normal daily monthly income that we used to have, because this is it's a necessity that people want to do. But then some people are using also the opportunity to enrich themselves, trying to double up their products in the market, and this is not affordable by so many people. And another thing that's happening now is there's a mismanagement of funds. So our Minister of Health had gone to Parliament a couple of days ago, and he was frustrated about the system, that the money that is being brought in for the COVID-19, people are more into what is the allowance that they're going to get out of it than what the purpose of which the money has been brought in. So African has to do a lot of changing. And I feel personally looking forward, I think we need to look at the scenarios again. You know, we did the Africa We Want scenarios.
Yes,
I
yes.
think now is the right time to also see if what we thought then in Nairobi and now, what's the difference? Is there going to be any changes or not?
Okay, excellent. We'll go through them in a few minutes. What were the scenarios? There were two. Actually, the YMCA did two. One at the Africa level, and there's another global scenarios which we'll just look at in the next few minutes. But thank you for that. Just put a pause on that. I'm also curious to hear from Asaf, because you are now from another, looking at it maybe from another angle with other non-YMCA practitioners. But what's your response?
Yeah, for me, something that came up when I was hearing the two talk is the reality bit of it, where, like, I'll give you a scenario for what's happening in the office. For those who don't know, I work for a company called ThinkPlace. We do a lot of innovation. So we thrive a lot in quote unquote challenge scenarios. Anything that comes up as a challenge to our clients, we take it up as something that we can look for innovation to solve those challenges. But one of the things that we are currently facing is looking at scenarios where the new norm brings up new problems. And I'll explain, like, I'm sure you've all had this. There've been increase in domestic violence during this time of the COVID. That brings another whole new challenge. There's been issues of access. Having worked in the healthcare space, we already had enough challenges when it comes to access of either family planning or just good healthcare. But now COVID has presented itself with a new set of challenges where we see in the next few years more and more people having challenges to access the services that we'll be looking for intervention. So for me, I just echo what the gentleman said. I'm more concerned about the social impact that will come from this situation. I'm glad all of us are in one form of understanding that this won't be a solution that will come up tomorrow. This is something that may take 18 months plus. We are talking of years possibly, where we might see ourselves having to adjust to new norms over the next couple of years. Maybe frustrating for some. Like I'll also just come up when I was just talking about this. The whole issue of even the mental state of people at the moment. We have people who don't know anxiety. We have people who don't know how to deal with this sudden change of how they've been living. Like the lady said, unemployment has become an issue. So coming from ThinkPlace and coming from a point where we deal in innovation, the social aspect of it is what we are now preparing ourselves to look at. What will be the new set of challenges that will come up?
Thank you. It's fantastic. We would ask ourselves what would be the new set of challenges, because one of the things we want to do in this session is to identify problems and to kind of like weight those problems. And we might ask ourselves, what are the new likely problems anyway? Some we are already facing, and some we might not be. We might not be facing right now, but we may be possibly predicting we will face. And Nirina, Purity, if you could just add a word.
Okay. I think for me, I don't know, 2 months down the line, I'm still reeling with the thought and the possibility of how long it would take us to recover. And even just looking at the charts that were shared in the video, looking at 18 months, 24 months, meaning that, we are going up to about 2022 and some predictions saying up to 2024. So it's just the gravity of the matter is a little paralyzing, to be honest, on my part. And I guess for the YMCA, it's such a critical question because our model is a lot about physical interaction. Even when we don't think about the business of our work, when we think about just the social interaction, the fellowships, the sporting activities, the hostels, we are directly, we are like right at the center of the impact. And so it's important for us to now move from paralysis, where I am, to the point of, okay, things can be done. It's not, the world is not really locked down. We are just needing to really find new ways of achieving our purpose. And so, yeah, that's my reflection at this point.
Yeah, I like what you say, because I never thought about it. The YMCA is actually, we are a high-touch economy. We meet a lot. We believe so much in that personal interaction, and now we are being told, okay, now you must adjust to stuff. You can't touch this anymore. You can't even get into an aeroplane and go to meet each other.
Precisely.
So, yeah, it's completely new to us. But thank you for that. Nirina, I think you've unmuted.
Yes, Lloyd, thank you. Yeah, I joined Purity's analysis, and mine would be more on the, the point of reference. The low touch economy has used to measure the length of duration of this uncertainty. It is put as the finding of the vaccine or finding of the cure. And unless we have this first parameter in place, we are still in a total uncertainty. We cannot even anticipate so much things. So all the calculations are just based on the fact that we are finding it at a certain point of time. It means for me that we need to really build first resilience, but also we need then more and more agility as we are navigating in a very, very changing context. We need to have that agility. And let me say it as so. My concern, again, with the YMCA is that we are not that agile in terms of policies, procedures, way to work, making decisions, so on and so on. So I guess something that we really need to identify within the reflection is how best can we touch and connect the YMCA work within all of these disruptions that are, let's say, requiring a total change also of our approach.
Mm. Yeah, okay. That's a good how might we question. How might we connect the YMCA work to, I guess, this new reality? So I think that's a fundamental how might we question going forward, given the challenges and the problems that we are seeing. Yeah, thank you. And do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think I agree with everyone that talked, but I just want to add is about mine. I look at psychological preparedness, because I'm looking even that affects young kids. Like today, my son as we were talking at home, my son is supposed to be sitting for his exams this year. And my daughter was telling him, you know what, until next year, June. So today I saw him, he was not even in the mood of reading or revising. So again, I saw it's affecting everyone psychologically. Again, I was watching something today. I'm like, is it the end times as a Christian? So those are the things that really need to balance. Economically, we are down. Infrastructure, we don't have. So I think it's still something that needs to settle down before we really get to understand each other. And looking at those scenarios, what are we really expecting?
Okay. All right, thank you. You've mentioned scenarios, and I'd like to share with us, the guys who've not been part of the conversations. I'd like to share that we did the scenarios process in 2018. we did do a scenarios, which is basically, you can't say it's a prediction, but we did a scenarios building process for 2063. We were very ambitious. We wanted to look at 50 years into the future. And we developed 3 clear scenarios, which we call the green, the red, and the blue scenarios. So the green scenario was about a radical shift that was going to be influenced by liberal values, technology advancements, globalization. That would be leading to an Africa in 2063 that is radically different in a good way, in the form that is understood to be the Africa in 2018. We also did an analysis, came up with a red horizon, which was a story of failure and collapse of the old order. And it was influenced by advancement of a political status quo. I think one of us did mention new corruption that has come about as a result of COVID. I think Priscilla mentioned it. And this one was talking about nationalization, which again, we are beginning to see, and localization of Africa affairs. I don't know if you're familiar, Herenaina and Priscilla, but Tanzania and Kenya are currently in kind of a tug of war. We are disagreeing, we've closed borders, and we're starting to nationalize and say it's Tanzania that is bringing the COVID to Kenya, it's Kenya that's bringing Tanzania to, we've started to have that conversation. And according to that horizons, the red horizon, the full consequences of these actions were going to come out at the end of 2063. And we noted particularly environmental catastrophe. And then there was the blue horizon, which was the story of less disruptive change that is driven by liberalization, privatization, through regional integration. But what it was doing, it was creating a very wealthy class, hyper wealthy class, and it was very exclusionary of everybody else. So by 2063, Africa was going to be occupied by foreigners, and natives, quote unquote, were going to be more economically colonized. And the country that we were pointing out at that time was China. Very interesting, because we know the origins of the virus and the Asian origins and the link to China. Now, what we didn't say, and I think this is why Priscilla was talking about, we need to relook at these scenarios. We did not in any way foresee or even begin to think of a flu-like pandemic. And once I've done some research, I've looked back and I've seen that, look, signs were there. At the time there was Ebola, we were just come out of Ebola. It was disruptive. There was the H1N1, the swine flu, and the SARS. They had just come around 2018, 2017. That's the time when we had talked about, when this had been talked about, and yet we didn't see them. So our scenarios were talking about these 3 horizons. The only health issue we were talking about was non-communicable diseases. It's just a note. Anybody would like to comment on that so that I take a glass of water?
Lloyd, maybe just to mention that everyone, even though let's say the most advanced countries that are all the time anticipating things coming up, have been surprised by this COVID-19. So it's totally unexpected, and I'm not very sure who might have it in their scenarios. Just to mention that, but I think that's also the interest of putting scenarios so that you try to imagine from scratch.
Yeah. Anyone else? One other person? Then I can introduce the world scenarios, the World YMCA scenarios. Okay, let me just introduce the World YMCA scenario. So in London, last year, we had a group of about I think 300 people sat together in total, developed the global YMCA scenarios or the World YMCA scenarios. And there were 7. One is one of a restorative advanced society. And the key trend here was biodiversity was going to meet artificial intelligence. There was the second one of concentrated competition, migration, meeting artificial intelligence. There was climate breakdown. This is the third one, where nationalism and patriotism was going to meet polarization. There was one of cross-cultural collaboration, where nationalism and polarization were going to meet migration. There was one called the Crimson Horizon, which talked about the trend here was around climate breakdown, meeting the rise of China. There was the 6th one called Migration to Perfection, where climate breakdown was going to meet biotechnology. And the 7th one called Climate Apartheid, where climate breakdown was going to meet extreme demographics. We, at that time, looked at scenarios to be around education and skills for conservation and climate change. These are the likely challenges. Safe spaces for sharing and cultural exchange. We were looking at the 3rd one being developing new skills for socialization. 4th is digital skills and STEM training. And the 5th one, I think, which we've all mentioned, is around mental health and spiritual guidance. Then comes COVID-19. And my estimation of everything is that COVID-19, yes, we were not able to look into it. We were not able, no one in the world anyway was able to predict the effect of COVID-19. But I think that COVID-19 has accelerated some of these scenarios that we are seeing today. And that's the point that I wanted to make. And COVID-19 has accelerated some of these catastrophes. COVID-19 has accelerated some of these trends when it comes to even good things like digital skills and STEM training, accelerated the need to look at mental health and spiritual guidance, and accelerated the need for us to create safe spaces, as Asaf mentioned. So that's the work which the YMCA has done when it comes to the scenarios building. I gave that presentation because Priscilla also mentioned that we needed to look at our own work when it comes to the issue around scenarios. So this is supposed to be conversational. I don't want to talk much more than this, but the last thing I will do, if you'll allow me, let me just give you a quick rundown of what we've done so far, and then we will now begin to the process of breaking down these challenges. And for this, I will ask us to split into groups and have a bit more conversation. There's a very interesting tool I found on Zoom that will allow us to go into groups. So let me just do a quick rundown for those who have not been with us in terms of where we've been as the why in terms of identifying these challenges. I will share my screen again. So in the first big idea session, just to bring us all together, we looked at what the YMCA did in terms of the charter results. And some of the challenges we felt was at the time, we were having a problem with attracting youth. I said this because we are also cognizant of the fact that COVID-19, if we are all agreed, is just going to accelerate. Whatever it is that we were struggling with is going to accelerate. It's bringing together a low-touch economy. And this is the scenario. The scenario is that we were facing at that time a challenge of attracting youth. In one of the sessions we had in one of the national movements, somebody even stated that perhaps the YMCA is attracting the wrong youth. There was a sense of frustration, a sense of hopelessness, indignation, and a concern for dwindling fortunes of the YMCA. I bring that, this, I'm just rushing through this. I bring this to bring us back to the beginning of the year, so that we can recognize that we are at a certain place, and this is our situation accelerated by COVID. And this is the reality of our market. How do we operate where we want to bring empowerment to young people? How do we become resilient? How does the YMCA react in a situation where we are already struggling with attracting of youth? Now we are forced to operate in a situation of low touch, a situation where we are told now essentially you cannot now go on, you can't touch this anymore. That is our situation. Can I get a response so that I don't feel like I'm completely rambling? Any response? Herinaina usually go fast. Oh yes, Asaf has apologized and he's going to leave. Thank you for being part of the meeting. I will send you the recording, and you're welcome to any meetings after this.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thank
But
you
go
so
ahead.
much
Yeah.
for having me. For me, I just wanted to say that it's unfortunate I'm exiting the meeting when we are talking through these scenarios, and it's something that I know we've talked with you offline about this, where as Think Place, we'd like to hear more about where the challenges may be for MCA, so that we can see where we can work through them together. So it's a good thing that we've recorded this session, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what everyone else will say when they get split up.
Yeah, okay.
And if there's another call anytime soon, we can always schedule for myself or anyone from Think Place.
Sure, definitely.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you. Anybody else?
It's Hernan here, Lord.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you for the presentations. It's really interesting as always. Thank you for that, and thank you also for updating us about how we are what is it we are dealing with the situation that now. So as you said, the corona might accelerating the scenario we are building on African level, but also on what is it on international level with with the World Alliance. Yes, the one things I wanted maybe to ask or to discuss, is during, because I participated so in I think Priscilla was been there during the youth scenarios building in Nairobi back on 2015, July 2017, I think. Then there is a lot of trends we tried to anticipate it, like especially in those trends. The most findings on the trends has been about technology, the use of technology, and then Africa will be the biggest market for the technology for the next time. And I can see right now that is just so accelerating, because just see through internet just recently that Zoom and other platform right now increase the benefits in a higher level. So that is one thing confirmed as well, for us as the African trend scenarios as well. Yes, but as we discussed, I was asking myself, which means so the corona means we need to readapt as well our scenarios as maybe as an African. How can we adapt the scenarios according, because I remember in the scenario we didn't expect any corona in thing. Is it means as well that we need to readapt our scenarios, or how it will be what is it handling in our part as an African as well. Maybe one last comment about the findings, the challenge we might face. You just saw it in your screen that we are, what is it, we might attack the wrong youth in the challenge
Mm,
from the international movement.
mm,
I was asking myself, is there a right or is there a right youth and is there a wrong youth? That is some things I was asking myself. So
yeah.
I I was asking myself, we might maybe change the vision of empowering the right youth for Africa. So maybe I don't know, that's just something I was thinking about. Is there a right youth or wrong youth? But yeah, but indeed that is a frustration, um, that the elder has a difficulty to, what is it, to attract the youth generation. The situation young people is changing on every day basis. So
Mm,
for people who is working with those young people, they have also to adapt the strategy, the what is it, the approach according to what's happening with young people. And I think one of the best platform that can help people to have innovation thinking like this is discussing, like having a space to discussion like we have right now,
yeah.
as you know. So, yeah, that is just an idea. So thank you for that.
Yeah, actually had a long conversation about exactly who is the wrong and the right youth, and I think in my response would be that is a key conversation. I think Frank, welcome, it's happy, nice to see you. I think it's a conversation we had in that time, and we didn't come to a conclusion of who the right and the wrong youth would be. But I think we're also dealing with that situation as the YMCA, where, to be honest, there are questions like that are being asked. And I can see Nirina. Nirina, go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Lloyd, for particularly for bringing on board again these discussions about, the wrong youth or the right youth. And thanks, Irnina, for raising also around that. For me, as you say, the coronavirus is just accelerating, things like that. And for us, this is so important for now that we really come back to the identity of the organization. And I want just to highlight that when a youth organization is having a struggle on finding who is the right youth or the wrong youth to serve, it's so existential. And my hope is that we can clarify this while proceeding. Thank you.
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree. And I think I just have to say that again, I feel very strongly that this scenario, this COVID-19 only accelerates, it accelerates whatever it is that was right or wrong. So if we were struggling with the issue of right or wrong youth, in my opinion, COVID is just going to accelerate that conversation even further. So it's good for us to have that existential conversation as we go along. Yeah. Anybody else would like to say something? Frank, maybe you can just yeah, go ahead.
Lloyd,
Yeah,
maybe last thing. I'm sorry, I'm just
sure.
talking a lot here.
No,
I
no, it's okay.
I'm just because I'm just checking the scenario what is it we have on Africa levels. And in another hand, this is things I was thinking of myself as well. If we look back, because on the scenarios, it means Africa for the next 50 years will be the basket for food for the all of the world. So because after I'm sure that is something that will be happen for this 24 months or 18 months for recovery for after COVID, that the people will be, that is just my own thinking, people will be focusing to the basic needs, and mainly there will be more focus on food, and for the basic needs, and also a specific focus for healthcare for everyone. So that means for us as an African that we will be also in an advantage place, because as you see, most of the people in Africa is working on agriculture and everything. So if we also take this as an advantage for Africans, that's also something might be a good uh, point for Africa while we are thinking about this recovery.
Okay, cool. Okay. I've noted it, and for the next session, today we're going to do a bit of a different session. So for the next session, I'm very sure we'll be able to deal with this issue for the next hour or so. And I just want Frank to say something, and then I'll introduce the tools to use for the next session, and then we can go into it, if that's okay. Because that next session will now help us to identify all these key existential issues that we need to be talking about, yeah? So Frank, are you able to speak? You'll have to unmute yourself.
Sorry?
No, I've done it for you, go ahead.
Good, thank you. Yeah, I was not in the Zoom page, Yeah, I'm very happy to join you now. Really, I didn't have time to go through the agenda really to be very well prepared, but I just first want to let you know that I was engaged in an advocacy meeting with some directors in the Department of Justice, and it is regarding the COVID threat that we have in the country, especially in the detention centers. So we are trying to ask for some changes, some decisions to be made very quickly as a contribution, and that we had very good meetings with them, and maybe next week new measures will be taken regarding the condition of the detainees. Maybe not only because of YMCA advocacy, but also because of the other civil society organization, everyone. So we also are contributing to this impact we are going to have. And now, coming to the topic, I don't really know what was the previous question, Lloyd. Maybe I need to just follow you a little bit before.
Okay, no worries. I wanted us to hear your voice a little bit.
Good.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, so we've talked a lot and everything is all over the place right now. We've identified 3 different scenarios: the low-touch economy, our own scenarios. We've looked at a few of the challenges that we are facing even before COVID, that existential question of youth. And now for this next session, I'd like to give us all a task. And we are going to, let me share my screen. We're going to have our first, I think it is going to be our very first session, that is Zoom breakout sessions. So I've shared with you what is called the problem sizing tool. If you have a pen and a paper, you can take notes, but I'll just explain it through. The first thing that we are going to do is take a few minutes. We are in 2 groups. I've divided us in 2 groups. It's just groups of 3 because we are 6 of us. And the first thing that I'd like us to do is to identify what is, can you see the first thing, which is to describe the user's problem or pain point. Which problem did you discover? When we went through all these scenarios, we've had this conversation, what would you say is the main problem? The big problem, the big it, that one issue that you feel is the big pain point for the YMCA at the continental, at global level, or even at your own level, but what do you feel is the main problem? Then after you've discovered that, number 2 is does this problem affect all the users in your market or in your area? Or is it just specific to a certain segment? So for example, does this problem affect everyone? Or like Priscilla mentioned, is it or alluded to, or is it something that affects entrepreneurs? So for example, like herself, and how many people estimated are there in that group? Then then number 3 is how often does the pain or problem occur during this whole situation? By situation is COVID and likely going into the future. And how often do you think this problem affects your user? Then thirdly, or let me say number 4, how much can you value, or how much money, how much value, or how much money are you already spending in trying to resolve? Or do you see yourself spending as your why, as the global why, or as the Africa why in solving this problem? And how much value is the solution going to be to the user? So the trick here is, after you've identified the problem, number 1, look at number 2, multiply it by number 3 and number 4. So for example, just using, it doesn't have to be accurate values, but what we are trying to do is the user segment, put a weight on the user segment. How much does the problem affect everyone? If it affects everyone, put a weight of between 1 to 3. If it affects everyone, give it 3. If it affects very few people, give it 2. Number 2, if it is very frequent, give it a weight of 3. If it affects, if it's not so frequent, give it a weight of 1. And in terms of how severe is it, the more severe it is, the more money you're going to have to spend, for example, and the more worth it is going to have, give it a 3. And if it is not so severe in terms of money and time, give it a 1. And then what we're going to do is to multiply 2 times 3 times 4 and get the most severe problem, and that will do it in plenary. So is there any question?
Yes, Lloyd?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. So my challenge is, since I missed the previous sessions, I'm asking myself, I'm not very sure to be useful for these sessions.
Okay.
I don't know what was the problems that were in the table before.
Okay. Don't worry, I've put you in a group with Nerina and Priscilla, and they will give you a very good feedback of what we discussed. And I could also share the link to the low-touch economy document so that you see it. But don't worry, Nerina and Priscilla will give you a very good breakdown of what happened.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you can print screen this, just print screen this on your machines or on whatever you're using, and then you can refer. And maybe in the next 20 minutes, we can all just pull back to the plenary and discuss. Yeah, is that okay?
Okay.
So everyone is okay with it? Okay, so
How do we go into the group? Somehow you're going to do that?
Yeah, it's going to happen automatically in the next 5, 4, 3. Okay, let's see. Let's go.
You have, just to mention, you have to join the room.
Yes,
Not using it.
Hello?
Lloyd, yes.
Yes, please.
We're in the room?
Yes, we are.
Excellent.
This is so you are a miracle pastor. You are
Okay. Let me go to the other room and see whether they are okay.
Thank you.
So
Oh,
yes,
good. And the teacher is here with us.
Excellent.
yes,
Yeah.
this with us. Yes.
Yeah. So, any questions?
Yeah.
I was just asking Naina if he had print screened because I hadn't.
Okay.
So we were going to
Yeah.
go through the question again.
Let me see if it's, I'm not sure if it's possible to share my screen to show with you guys. Let me see how that would work. Yeah, I can.
You can, yeah.
Yeah, I can, yeah. I'm also using it for the very first time, so it's
It's very
interesting.
cool.
Yeah.
It's very, very cool. I can see, but I think you might have. So we pick the problem.
Yes.
So are
So,
we going to give a scale? You had mentioned about severity, 1, 2, 3.
yes, yes. So the idea is after you just pick the main problem which you feel, just discuss, because I'll be here, we discuss the main problem which we feel is the bigger problem. And then you describe it. And then now I assess this problem.
Okay.
The first assessment area is the user segment. Looking at our user segment, which I guess is the youth.
Okay.
I don't know what to, we assess a user segment and then say, if this problem is really affecting the users in our market, and there are very many users, we give it 3.
Okay.
And then a scale of 1 to 3, 3,
okay.
And then 1, yeah. Then if it's very frequent, 3.
Yeah.
Yeah, given just those small descriptions over there. And then how severe is it in terms of cash?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So in terms of the problem, I don't know, you can redirect me if I'm headed in the wrong direction. But I think the problem is how we remain relevant with a low touch situation.
Okay.
That's my thinking. I don't know if Naina had another problem in mind.
Yeah, I think I shared the same viewpoint, Daniel, and I think this is the most painful problems.
Very true. Okay.
I agree, especially given that we were already struggling with relevance in the first place in many of the ways.
Yeah. Because I think one of the things I've been looking out for is to see who is still active. So those posts on Facebook and wherever, and also on the one of these big Africa-wide groups, is just to see who is still remaining visible in the midst. Like for instance, I was so worried for Kenya-wide, but I've seen that there is some activity now. I think Nairobi South have been giving masks and stuff like that. So my heart is not so anxious for them anymore, but they had been silent for so long.
Yeah.
Gosh. Anyway, all right. So I guess that then is our problem. So now it's looking at the severity in terms of the number of users that are affected.
Yeah.
Who does our relevance affect?
I think it affects all, especially our client, which is our youth. So yeah, so if you ask me on my viewpoint, it's affected all, and not any specific segment, but all.
Because okay, the thing I was thinking about was, I feel like it will be different for different national movements. I hear you, Naina, when you say it will be all, and especially for you who had a very active day-to-day interaction with young people. You know, like young people were coming to you, basically. But we have some YMCAs where young people are not coming to them. It's the YMCA that's usually going out to search for the young people. And I feel like in that kind of situation, the people who are affected mostly are the staff, in the sense that, like they're not able to go out to do the work that they needed to do. So for them, the people who are first affected, okay, I'm sorry, Naina, I'll use Kenyawa experiences a lot because we are right next door with them. So we understand some of the challenges that they have. But when you think of like the business model itself, like now the whole place is closed. Nairobi Central is closed. They don't have people staying in their hostel. No one is coming to the cafeteria. So in real sense, the people who have been affected there is the staff who've had to go on unpaid leave and therefore have no income, etc. But anyway, I guess even this just confirms what you were saying, Naina, that both the young people and the staff and volunteers are affected. So maybe then the severity is 3 because there are many groups of people that are affected. Hello?
Yeah, I was wondering whether you're still there. Naina?
I think Naina has left. I see as though we are just 2 of us.
Oh, he's left. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh dear, oh dear. Okay. Let me assign him. I see he's here.
Okay.
Assign to, this is break 2.
Yeah, this is 2.
Okay. I think maybe he lost his internet.
Yeah, connection. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think I really am worried about this extended like what the guys of the low touch economy were saying. It's very extended, and I worry about that, the way it is going to be extended to so long, and every time we try to force ourselves to go back, we are forced to come back. There are new breakouts, and that really worries. I find that to be completely worrisome. I don't know how to respond to that. Yeah.
Anyway, let me not digress, but I was going to ask very many questions.
Please do.
Like, okay, like in the US, we are hearing a lot of, and even Italy, for instance, the way the death toll would just rise, But I feel like there's certain information we don't have. Maybe I'm looking to be comfortable. I'm looking to feel that I'm not at risk. I think that is my problem, because I'm like, who is dying? Of course, the science says it's the people with preconditions and things like that. Like those are the people who are, most affected. So are the number of deaths, for instance, in a place like Italy and wherever, are they confirming that? You understand? Because then if the statistics show that now even the pre-existing conditions is not an issue, like anybody, even if you are healthy, if the bug catches, you could, go down very quickly. In Kenya, the issue is, okay, fine, if you're test positive, you're put out from the community, so of course that it doesn't spread further. But the question is, how many people are really sick? And I know you can't leave someone outside, so because they're not sick, but if they're able to spread, as in it's such a combination of things, and the information we get is not really disaggregated. So if maybe that was clear, then it would be clearer to people that yes, we actually should stay home until this thing, is over, or until. But right now, it's that lack of information that is causing people to just want to reopen, because we don't have the disaggregation of data, so that we know that, okay, fine, everybody is 100% at risk. There is nothing that reduces your risk. Or, okay, these kind of people are at risk, and therefore they should be the ones that do their best to stay at home. So I think that's my struggle. But in as far as like the impact of our work, just another bigger conversation. But we still have to decide on what the severity is.
Yeah. So, Naina, welcome back.
Yes, thank you so much. I was being, the connection. I'm sorry for that. I had a little issue. I'm sorry for that.
No problem. No problem. Yeah. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting. So, what is our major problem?
I think our problem is still the relevance. As you said, we were struggling with our relevance before. So if we were of no use to society in the pre-COVID time, either how do we reclaim our use, or we will die down. Or if we were relevant, then it means that we need to secure that relevance.
Yeah, as I said, I really agree with Purity on this part, and I strongly agree because as she mentioned, we already struggled to put our relevance in plus, and we were working hard for that since a very very long time. And right now for COVID, it has been worsened in a different way. Like as you know, that we since this approach, this concept of youth power space, we used to bring young people in a physical place, and right now we can't do that anymore, and that has become our identity as a YMCA, to bring young people in one physical place as part of the youth power space approach to deal to bring our education and something like this. So right now that is as a problem. And secondly as well, I just had a meeting with some of our young entrepreneurs. Very recently, the beginning of this week, just to assess how they deal with the pandemic in Madagascar. And as I want to say, Madagascar, one of our relevance has been put on the fact that we were always been there for vulnerable young entrepreneurs. And right now, it seems like those young entrepreneurs, I'm sure that after the COVID, we will have a biggest loss of our results that we have been built since many, many years. There will be so many, many young entrepreneurs that will be changed as for priorities. Even right now, I can feel that. So those are just a reason why I said I really agree with the Purity. That's one of the biggest problem will be our relevance.
Okay. So there's a question here that asks, does this problem affect all users in our market, or is it specific to a certain user profile? And it sounds like you are very much concerned with the young entrepreneurs.
Exactly, as in my context in Madagascar,
Yeah.
I just see that since the beginning of the pandemics, the private sector has lost a thousand of billions of ariary in Madagascar since 4 months now. So as YMCA, we were we always in our work was targeting the informal sector for young people, young entrepreneurs that is in informal sector. So those young entrepreneurs was being the most vulnerable and most affected by this pandemic. So that is one segment of young people that will be more affected by the problem as well.
Oh, okay. I forgot to add something. There's this thing called a whiteboard where we can actually write notes and say,
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can also write yourself. You see, like, can you see where I'm typing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just you can type. Just things I was finding out.
Really?
Which are very, yeah.
Oh yeah, I can see it now. That is very a very good technology.
Yeah, I forgot to mention it to everyone. Sorry.
But only the host can
No, you can
type.
try and type.
I'm typing.
And it's not showing. There you go.
Huh?
That's you with the red lines, yeah?
No, it
No,
was me.
unless
It was me. I'm just trying. I'm just
Yeah.
trying.
So you can
Then I
just.
will revise it.
Where did you go, Naina? What did you do?
There is a little pen somewhere down on the left side. So just
On the left.
Can
No?
you see my screen?
Okay, let me see view options. I can see your screen.
At the very top, or somewhere on your screen, there is select text, draw, and stuff like that. Can you see?
Oh, my computer doesn't have that. Maybe I
Oh,
haven't updated my Zoom.
okay.
Or maybe because I'm a co-host. I don't know. It's okay. Not to worry. I shall find it one day.
Yeah. It's just really nice to.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's just this thing. No wonder people like Zoom, even with the problem. So, you talked about young entrepreneurs really suffering. Do you agree, Purity?
I agree. I agree with that they are, especially, I mean, I'm just thinking about, for instance, the itinerant traders, even when they are not young. Anyone who was in the informal sector, I think is just really affected, especially by the lockdowns, not being able to move around, not being able to set up your business on the street the way you used to. The vulnerabilities have just been accelerated.
Okay.
Yeah, that is one segment. But as I said as well, I think that might affect the biggest problem might affect all of the young people, all of our clients, all of
Yeah.
the people we say. And just to what is it to give an example, just like 2 weeks after this lockdown in Madagascar, there is several young people who is contacting me and asking, is there anything Ymca can do for us, because we don't eat, we don't have anything to eat or something. So I can say that everyone, all young people is affected as well.
True.
So am I right to say our severity level is at 3? It's affecting a large group of young people.
Yes.
And it's affecting them very much.
Yes, I agree.
Okay. The second question is in terms of frequency. How often does this pain or problem occur during the activities of the Y? And in this period of time, how often does the user do this activity on a yearly basis or during this period of time? So the thing is then, this pain is about young entrepreneurs not getting their income. And that is it. And the worry is, just to paraphrase, what are they doing then if they're not able to act as entrepreneurs? How are they coping?
Can you come up again with the question, Lord? I lost a bit.
Oh, sorry. The question is, how are these young entrepreneurs then coping? How are they coping?
Oh.
How are they coping in this period of time?
Yeah, the thing is that there is no space for them to cope, because there is a lot of restriction, and there is a lot of out of the restriction system that has been put in place didn't give them much space for them to cope with the thing. But in different ways, there is some entrepreneurs, depending on the activities, is coping in different ways. So, for example, there is some entrepreneur right now that is working on a online online selling, and there is a entrepreneur that is you know what is it coping with these in other way. But the only thing that is sure is that the restriction system that is in place doesn't allow them to cope it. Yes, especially in Madagascar anyway.
Yeah. So can we say then that I'm looking for the question, the frequency, number of times the user is affected is at a scale of 3?
Yes, I can
Let's
confirm
see.
that as well.
Can, okay. Then the last question in let me see, let me just put that is, sorry, something went wrong. Okay, is equals to 3. So the last question that the tool is asking is, I would really want to see the other guys are doing well. How much money is the user already trying to spend on trying to solve this issue? And how much money is solving this problem worth to the user? So this is just a question of how much are we willing to spend to solve this issue?
To solve the issue.
Yeah. And as you guys discuss, let me just go to the other group and see that they're okay. Yeah? You guys can, I'll be right
Okay.
back. Yeah.
Sawa.
Sawa.
But then I think it would also require a bit to define what we think of bigger activity.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, so if we can just agree on which kind of bigger activity are we talking about, then I think it would canalize a lot more our thoughts in that way.
I just, sorry to interrupt, I'm just curious how we are doing. I just snuck up on you in the group. How is everything though?
Lloyd, we have a bit of confusion
Okay.
when we are in the step 3.
Okay.
We have defined our problem as access and affordability of technology.
Okay.
Now, when we are talking about how often this pain or problem occur during the bigger activity, we were wondering if we had to define also what we call the bigger activity in here so that we can do the math.
Yeah. If you can describe what the bigger activity is, then it will be excellent. It will be awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the bigger activity?
That is related to the problem, which is access to technology. So the bigger activity, for example, the other group has identified the problem to be youth entrepreneurship. Yeah, as the key issue. So the activity they are looking at is how often are they able to be engaged in their day-to-day entrepreneurial activities. Yeah, the big activity could also be just the issues around COVID. To see how often does low access to technology occur during the COVID period. Yeah, so it's loosely structured like that. It's just how you frame it.
Okay, we have framed our problem as to be linked directly to the YMCA Live. So we talked about the programs, and I guess We can define then the bigger activity as the programs that we are running,
Yes.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, okay, just to check on Frank and Priscilla.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree? I'm just like taking
Yeah.
too much.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fine.
Okay, so I can go back to the other group.
Yeah, Lloyd.
Yes.
Yeah, but before you go,
Yeah.
do you think that is it clear enough when we just say it like programs, huh? Or do you think that we need to point out a specific activity as a bigger activity?
I feel there's value in the bigger, in pointing out, being a bit more specific for the time being. I feel there's value in specificity, like maybe saying it's around youth entrepreneurship, for example. I just feel there's a bit more value in that, because the next exercise, which I don't know if we'll have time for it today, but the next exercise is about actually creating ideas around solving that problem. So if we are not specific in determining the problem, then we'll get lost in trying to come up with solutions for that problem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So how many more minutes before I leave?
Yeah, I think it's for us it's good now. You can go to the other group. We continue our work.
Okay. Okay, I'm out. See you later.
How it's happening in Kenya, but in Madagascar we had a lot of funding from the World Bank, from the USA. I think all of the total of the fund that has been given to Madagascar is actually $14 billion.
Sure.
And
Wow.
yes, and we don't know where it's going.
It went.
And we didn't see where it is. So it's very difficult. So that's why I said there is also a big part of the government that needs to be done as well.
Very true. Very true. How is the other group doing, Lloyd? Are they almost done?
And they are addressing number 2. So they needed to know whether to be specific on a certain issue on their problem, and I was like, yeah, it's best if you are specific.
Specific.
Yeah.
Okay. We've discussed with Nina, and for the last question, we think the weight is 2, based on Nina's experience and conversation with the young entrepreneurs.
Okay.
But if we have some time, he can share again.
Yeah.
Since the others have not finished.
Yeah, they are not even anywhere near, and I've lost all the work in the
Oh
whiteboard.
my gosh, on the whiteboard.
Yeah.
Okay, I wrote down the numbers we had. We had 3, and now the last one is 2.
So the problem, I had written the problem on a separate issues, but our problem was around relevance to society.
Relevance. Yeah. And then we said the people who are affected is the young entrepreneurs.
Yeah. And
then in terms of how much they're willing to invest, what the cost of returning is of solving. Because we discussed a little bit about that. Like, we can't count the money, but we can maybe count the weight or the value of investment that the young entrepreneurs would be willing to make to sort out the problem. But now when I'm saying it out loud, I'm just wondering, whose responsibility is it to solve the problem? Should it be us? Like, should we have been discussing the entrepreneurs, or should we have been discussing about ours, because we are the ones, okay, our relevance, okay, let's see, if we're using the Madagascar experience, they were very relevant, especially to young entrepreneurs. So the young entrepreneurs are the ones that are affected, for instance, the YMCA is not functioning anymore. So I'm wondering whether the question of how much is to be investment or should be spent, should the question be to us or to the young entrepreneurs? That question of money, who is to answer the question of money?
It's basically us.
It's us, eh?
Yeah, we should answer. Who is the user, first of all? Because the question is, how much money is the user already already spending on trying to solve or reduce or avoid this problem? And the problem is our relevance to youth in the society with specific regard to the young entrepreneurs. So how much are we as the YMCA already spending on trying to solve or reduce this problem?
The problem of relevance.
Of relevance to the youth, especially to young entrepreneurs.
The young entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So the question would then be, that changes the question a bit. But I wonder if, okay, in quick thinking, I don't think the rating would change.
Okay.
Because there are some things that are still, taking it back to the conversation we had with Naina, that there are still some things that are out of our control, that are in the environment of the young entrepreneurs. Like there is the training, there is the support that we give them, that's given to them, whether it's in terms of training or in terms of seed money or connecting to opportunities and stuff like that. But when you think about, we have no control, for instance, on the lockdowns, you know, we have no control over the restricted movements, or even some businesses completely being closed down completely, in as far, like when you think about restaurants and stuff like that, we have no control over that, and that would be somebody else's responsibility to undo. So I think that we can only invest at a level 2, for instance, and the third level is because of other players in the sector. Okay, now I'm just babbling.
No, but it's more of a partnership model where it's not the YMCA 100% trying to resolve this issue. There are other players.
Exactly.
So let me just go back to the original problem. The thing is, describe the user's problem or pain point.
So if the user is us.
Yeah, so the question is, who is the user? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the question.
Yeah.
The user is the why.
Okay.
Or the user is the young person. I don't know. What if we did both scenarios?
Yeah.
Just draw a paper, a line in the middle of the page. Say the why as the, I mean the young, okay, the why as a user.
Yeah.
Our problem is relevance.
Okay.
And the extent of our problem, what was that question about people being affected?
It says, okay, describe the user's problem or pain point. Okay, then the other, does this problem affect all the users in your market, or is it specific to a certain user segment or profile? You know what's happening?
We are
back to the, we are back to the conversation of who is the user. I think that it was there during the strategic plan process. Yeah, you remember?
Exactly.
Yes.
So what I suggested, because we are taking the place of Africa Alliance of AAYMCA, right?
Just the YMCA, not the
Just the
Africa Alliance.
YMCA.
Just the
YMCA.
YMCA.
Okay, because if we are putting in the place of the Africa Alliance of them, the users would be all the way the national movement in Africa.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you are putting in place of the YMCA, the users will be the young people.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay, so just let me ask the question again. Sorry, I'm looking for that tool. It says, describe the user's problem. So if it's the YMCA, generally, including the AAY inside, the problem is relevant, right?
Mm.
But what if it's now, if it's the young person or the young entrepreneur?
If it's the young entrepreneur, I think also the answer of if it's affecting other users in the market, I think it would be we would still remain at a level 3. Because it's not now, in fact, the problem is not even just about the small informal businesses. Even big businesses are having to, rethink their models. Yeah, so I think the extent to which users in the market are being affected, I think we would still remain at 3. Because, I mean, that question is asking, is it just us who are affected or all, I mean, is it just young entrepreneurs or it's all entrepreneurs, isn't it?
Yeah, if we were to ask it for the entrepreneurs, yeah, does this problem affect all the young entrepreneurs in the market, or is it specific to a certain segment? Like, for example, the ones who sell dark liver are not as affected by as the ones who sell maybe plastic goods, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Naina, what do you think? Oh, so go ahead.
No, let Naina speak, please.
Okay.
No, go ahead. I follow in and I'm trying to process as well. And I agree of what you guys are saying.
Mm. Because the challenge for me with every time we get into the problem analysis for the why, as AAY, we always get into that problem. Who is our user?
Yeah.
We are not able to confidently answer that question.
Yeah.
Because for the why, it's very easy to say. For the why in general, our main problem is, our pain point is that we are feeling a lack of relevance. But then the question is to who? Is it to other people in, like, for example, the scouts, to the public sector, or is it to the youth?
Yeah.
Which leads me to the other question. Go ahead.
No, I think for us, okay, the thing is, I think our biggest challenge is because we purport. We purport to exist for the youth. That is our biggest, I think that's our challenge. And either we are too ambitious and have set ourselves up for failure, as you are regularly reminding us, setting ourselves up for failure.
Yeah.
So because our frustration is we exist for youth, but when you prick our vein, it is not youth that come out of that vein. You understand?
Yeah.
Like our blood should be youth, but our blood is not youth. The image you see of the Y is not young people. Like when you step in randomly into okay, not all YMCAs, but most YMCAs, when you walk into the Y, you might not meet with young people. You are likely to meet older people. You're likely to find a focus on the building and the infrastructure, on the structure of the program, whether or not it's reached the young people. So I think that's the thing, and that's why we are struggling now with relevance, because we should have been there. Our imagination is we are the one-stop shop. Like if government wants an answer about young people, that they just walk into the Y.
Yeah.
But that's not the case for very many YMCAs. Or if any other, organization is looking to study young people, ideally they should come to the Y. But right now we wouldn't want them to come to the Y because we are not so sure we would be in a position to represent young people well, because either they're not coming to us, they're not coming to us, and we are not, even when we go out to them, we're not reaching as many as either we imagine we do or as we wish we would.
Naina?
Yeah, I'm still processing my mind. I it seems like I'm trying to process myself as well at the same time. So I'm listening and I'm processing. I'm contributing if I find something.
Yeah. I think for me, I ask myself if our post-COVID concern, is it youth or is it our own basic survival? By our own basic survival is our income, our all those things, or is it the basic survival of youth?
That is a very good question that I'm still asking myself as well. The thing is, if we don't care about our own survival, our income, our resources, it will be we won't have we will not have any possibilities and any resources to fulfill our mission and to work for those young people. So that will affect obviously the young people. Yes, but in the other way as well, it is if we don't consider to help those young people to get back and to recover from this crisis, it means we are not doing what we supposed to do as well. So it's a very good question, eh?
Yeah, it's a good question because now this is the time, and I think Carlos has raised it before in some meeting. I don't know what they say, NGS. Like, if, for instance, Madagascar YMCA was not to reopen after COVID, who will miss? Who will miss you?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's why the question of relevance is very big. I'll give you an example. Nani, what's her name? Lloyd, you know her, Akothe. Akothe Herenaina she's a musician. I think let's call her a musician for now.
Yeah.
She's many things. She's many things that she's a musician. Very controversial in her performances, etc. But there's a post she put up, and I completely understood that post. There were women knocking at her door, asking for food. So for me, I was like, I mean, irrespective of how crazy she is, how questionable her performances are, she is relevant to somebody because she does a lot of outreaches and things like that. So she has a lot of philanthropy around her. So if that philanthropy was not relevant, no one would care that she's not giving out stuff or that she's closed her gate or something of the sort. You understand?
Yeah.
So I think that's why that question of relevance is very important to us. If we close down, if we are not able to reopen, which is, I think, a reality for some of the YMCAs, especially abroad, because of the way the model was, they were reliant on people coming to use their services. Now, if people are able to work out at home, etc., they have actually realized they don't need to go to the gym, then that means that there's a gym somewhere that's going to close down, owned by the Y. So is there anyone, if there was a possibility that we are not able to open and we started to let our customers know, Would there be people who say, no, this is not possible, rally other people, get us open again? Or would there be people who are like, oh, Ipoleni, we are so sorry that you can't reopen. We wish you the very best in your next endeavor. Or will people's reaction also be good readers?
Yeah.
You know, so I think that's why still the question of relevance comes back. And that's why I was saying, I started by saying, I was very keen to see which of the YMC, and maybe the question is being asked of us also as AAY. So maybe I shouldn't be standing on a pedestal thinking that even as we will remain open, but I'm just thinking of the other of the YMCAs, the ones who remain visible during this time, whether you're, giving out sanitizer, you're giving out foodstuffs, you're giving out whatever it is you're able to do that causes you to remain visible and people attach a value to you even in this time of crisis, then will really determine our relevance. Which also speaks to us, Lloyd, like if we are not doing anything for the national movement.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah.
During
what
this
is our
time,
point?
yeah, they'll be like, okay,
What was the point?
of what value are you? When we were in crisis, we needed you, but we didn't see you. So, anyway, as they say, a friend in need is a friend in need. So if we are not being a friend in need right now, even as our own relevance and existence is in question. So it could be us having this conversation, for instance, because I mean, the three of us here are staff of the Y. So really, if the Y closes, we have no salary. So for us, it's important that the Y remains because our livelihoods depend on it. But we have to ask ourselves, if we were to close down, who would miss us?
It sounds to me like we are very concerned about the relevance. That's the big issue for us. The big problem is the relevance issue.
Yeah.
Then a secondary problem is being relevant to the youth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Will they come? Will they come at our doors?
Okay. So we are at 18.
We are at 18, yeah.
Is it 18 or 12? 12, sorry. 3 times 3 times 2 is 12.
No,
No, it's 18. Yeah, it's 18. 3 times 3 is not 6. Sorry.
I'll pray for you. And you're with a kindergartner in your house?
I'm
Please
sorry
do
for
not
her.
mislead her.
With those few remarks, let me find out how the other guys are doing.
So that they can be able to do small farming in their areas. So, but that's what we have been doing so far.
Okay.
Okay, I guess, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I say maybe, I don't know what the feeling is, we can make a small plenary presentation? We can discuss it in plenary. Can we?
Maybe if we have 5 minutes, it will help because we have been discussing, we are going a little bit wider than your task. And then
okay, that's excellent. That's excellent. All right.
Hi guys, I'm back. I'm sorry, Lloyd, I have misled you. I was
No. It's okay. It's okay. It's just that the other group also, we have finished. We started going into a bit deeper than the task. So I was just wondering if it's the same here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 5 more minutes and then I'll just put a timer. In 5 minutes, then we'll all be back. I hope it will work. Yeah.
Good. So welcome back, Irina.
Thank you. Lloyd was
because of this cure.
And
yeah, so as I explained, it's politicized too much.
Yeah.
And as for me, I don't have enough proof to say that
it's working.
It's working. Yeah. And so I'm not drinking it. Might be the fact maybe the fact as well that my fiancé is a doctor, so they need something.
Yeah, what does she say about it? She's like, don't touch
Yes,
that thing.
no. Yeah, she just said don't touch this. It's it's a thing. So it's very difficult here, and
Yeah.
for people here, it depends on which party of the politics are you. This is where you decide
Okay.
I'm drinking or not drinking.
Whether you're drinking or not drinking. Oh my gosh.
Exactly.
Africa, you
Are
just
you
got to love us.
good? That is very hard. It's very very hard. So and that is a tension that you could feel as well, even with the team, even with
Yeah.
young people, even with
Yes.
that is a tension that you could feel very easily.
Yeah.
So that is some things you need to consider as well.
Hiya, Mr. Muriuki. It's
Yes,
already 4.
yes. The other guys have asked for 5 minutes.
What?
Yeah, 5 more
Okay.
minutes. They there are more. I think there are 4 guys there. So I guess the conversations will be a bit more. But I had asked for 30 minutes extra if possible.
Okay.
But I think I don't think we will do the next exercise. This was the next exercise. Let me just show it to you guys. It's
Yeah,
called
sure.
opposite thinking.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite thinking. Let me share my screen. Opposite thinking. So this is what we're supposed to do. So we've developed all this, the problem, and we've developed, we have weighted the problem, and we've seen this is the most significant problem. So we're supposed to look at ourselves and see, to describe assumptions that we have about the concept or domain that we have developed. So as the way when you've looked at it, we've seen that it's around relevance. Sindio? Renina, forgive us. We'll keep saying Sindio and Sawa and all those kind of
Right.
things.
Him is a veteran now,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure.
Sure. So after we have described, after we have identified this to be our issue, then we describe what assumptions do we have about this concept. So, for example, let's look at relevance. We are assuming a few things. If we are assuming that the YMCA is probably the most equipped, and that is why we want to be relevant. Relevance comes out of being best equipped in terms of facilities, and when we have facilities, then we will be relevant, for example. And then we go ahead, the second one, to describe the opposite of the assumption. Just the opposite of this assumption. That maybe it's not if we were to look at maybe the equipment and the tools, what would be the opposite of having them to gain relevance? Maybe then the issue is that the opposite is that you are relevant without this equipment. I don't know if it makes sense, but the opposite of that situation, that you are relevant with equipment, would be that you are relevant without the equipment. The equipment doesn't give you relevance. You don't need the spaces that we keep talking about, or the capital that we keep talking about as the why. We don't really need it. It doesn't give us relevance. So then we go to this solution, which would describe a totally new service or offering, which improves out of that opposite.
Hey, say that again.
We go to a new service, an offering, or an improvement, which is born out of what we have just described as the opposite. Of the assumption. So if we're saying we don't need equipment to be relevant, then what new service can we give that would build our relevance? Yeah. So this is why we can't do this today, because that needs a whole day. that needs a lot of thinking, and it needs for us to reform our thinking even around identifying the problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is a very innovative approach. Eh?
It's this innovation is high.
Opposite thinking.
Yeah, opposite thinking. And
So
then
you
just go ahead.
I just say you just find out what is the opposite of the
The
what
assumption.
your thinking is, the assumption
Yeah.
is, and then you
Yeah.
propose the solution
Yeah.
according to the opposite. Eh?
Yeah.
Oh, never. That
Yeah.
is good. I've never heard about that. That is very good.
It helps you to think outside of the box. Eh? It helps you to eliminate
Exactly.
your box
It helps you
completely.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when I
That's
think
good.
about what we've been doing at AAY, for example, we've been talking a lot about reviving dead capital.
Yeah.
The assumption has always been that capital will make you relevant. That's always been our assumption. Even the original thinking of the past Purity, if I'm not wrong, was from the idea that we need to build our capital, our spaces.
Yeah.
That's why initially we wanted to put computers and that kind of thing. Remember?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But now it's starting to look like, okay, maybe you can even be relevant without those spaces.
Yeah.
So what new
It's
offering
true.
can we give? Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah. So I don't know. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying, and also there's a risk, with all the, I keep thinking that we still stand a risk with all the social enterprise manuals that we are trying to do, because it's very easy then to just become businesses. Like for me, the question still remains, how do we keep the national movements, for instance, accountable for the increased revenue? You understand? Because the increased revenue, there's no guarantee that they're going to use it for youth programming. So, I mean, of course, the focus on the capital has been increase how much we generate from it.
Yeah.
But then what about, I mean, and we, Renaina, we're always gossiping about you guys in our office, because we're like, you guys don't own a building at all, but you have you have the greatest impact on young people. So I agree with you, Lloyd, that the issue might not be, the building. It might not be the building. It might not be the land.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can sell a state secret, Purity, if you'll
Sell
allow
a
me.
state.
Let me sell a state secret. Right now at AAY, we have a building. That building is practically empty. Power is no longer there. We have spaces up. Have we become more relevant? And our building is very, it's very what? It's usable. It's almost modern. It is prime property. It is well maintained. That building is very well maintained.
But has nothing to do with our relevance. Has zero impact on our relevance.
Relevance, yeah. So are we? The assumption is, for me, the assumption here is that describe the assumption you have about your concept is that our relevance is born out of our capital. The opposite is that our relevance comes irrespective of our capital, or we don't even need that capital to be relevant. And then now after that, we can design new services that we can offer.
That are not reliant on the capital, on the building,
capital, on the building. Yeah, maybe it's human capital or something else.
Maybe idea.
Yeah.
So and you see now, by the way, we even really have to really think about it, because in this day and age of social distancing, for instance, like say for instance, we are not in the office, but we've had this meeting and very many meetings. Like, must we have an office? Like, does our office really, does our work, or the secretariat, for instance, does it really need an office?
Yeah. And I think DJ came to the office and she told us she's not going to help us to raise money for capital expenditure. You remember, Purity?
The building. Yeah, and we were so upset
we
with
were
her,
angry.
but now maybe she had a point.
She had a point, yeah.
But the challenge is, our biggest challenge is just, it's money, because we know we need the money. We need money, basically. And for us, the question was, how do we generate more?
money. But then think about it now. Is money really the problem?
There we go. There we go.
Is the issue money?
Yeah.
I mean, beyond money to pay salaries,
Yeah.
because people are doing something, people are creating a product or are providing a certain service. So for that, let's say at the very least, we need salaries. So the question is, how do we generate salaries? Will the salaries only come from the money we generate from the building? Is there a way we have a product or a service that generates income away from the building? I don't know. Anyway, lots of questions.
Yeah, let me find out the other guys.
We need to finish. I'm so
Yeah,
sorry,
we need
Lloyd.
to finish. Yeah, let me get the other guys.
Call it in English. When you start a business and then you say, okay, I must spend $100 and I will collect $150. So my gain is 50.
Your profit?
My profit is $50. But at the end of the day, I only have $20 as profit. So the 30s are my expected, but I didn't get them. So what do you call? How do you call it? Monk agani.
Loss.
Yeah, it is. It is my loss. Yeah, it's lost.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Lloyd, we see you.
Yes. I just wanted to call us all together to the main. I think we've all started talking about money, so it's a good time to go back to the rooms. Yeah. Yeah. So let me just close the rooms. Yeah. Are we all back?
Yes.
Seeing. Oh, everyone is here. We were 5. We are 6 of us. Yeah. Okay. Good. Is anyone missing? Oh no. Okay. Lovely.
Anne has left.
Yeah, I think Anne is having problems with her phone. I think she mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah. So how did we find the session? Anyone? Okay, I think I've muted everyone. Let me unmute everyone. Anyone would like to? Let's have from the group, from the breakout room one, which had Frank and Marina and Priscilla. Just a quick rundown of what you did, so that we just get an understanding. Just quick 2 minutes so we can conclude with a few words.
We didn't agree on who will report. We didn't have that time. But I would like to invite Priscilla to share for the sake of the English formulation.
Okay. During our session, we talked about the problem. Which problem of pain did you discover? And one more that. Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, we do, Priscilla.
Okay,
I think
yes.
it's
Now
Frank
I'm
who is trying
back.
to.
Okay.
Yes.
And
okay.
my connection is not stable.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, please, Priscilla, you can go, please.
Yes. So our problem that we discovered was access and affordability of technology. Looking at skills training, looking at the programs that we're actually doing, and for our user segment, we looked at does this problem affect all the users in your market? or is it specific to a certain user segment or profile? So it affects all three of us, and our answer is 3. And how many people are there in that group? And it's 3. So our answer for number 2 is 3. Frequency, how often does the pain or problem occur during the bigger picture activity? We say very often. And how often does the user do this activity on a yearly basis? We say on a yearly basis. And so how often is this pain felt a year? Very often. So all 3 of us agreed on this one. And on the 4, how much money is the user already spending on trying to solve, reduce, or avoid this problem? So we looked at both, Frank and I looked at the per student, how much we charge, how much it costs per student. And we looked at an estimate of like $600 per student. So that's what we looked at for number 4, and how much is solving this problem was to the user. I don't think we came into an agreement for that. Did we, Frank and Marina?
No, we
Not
didn't. We
really,
just
but you were
decided.
saying it seems that the question, both questions may have a similar answer, you see. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I was saying that it assumed that the same answer will go for the 2 questions under 4.4. You see.
Okay, thank you. And the second group, Naina, maybe you could just give a brief of what we discussed.
Yes, of course. First of all, we tried to be very specific, and we tried also to be very clear in what we just say. We discussed first as like everyone. We discussed what is the biggest problems, the big pain points that we could say. So for us, we could identify that the biggest problem we might face is more relevance to to society in our work. So this is Purity. You can add if I miss something. So one of the biggest problems we just discovered is this. What do you call it? Uh, our relevance to society as a YMCA. So there was a big discussion among us: is who is the users? Is it YMCA or is it young people? So we didn't find any answer. Maybe that is another discussion. So after that, we said who is the most affected by these problems. So we just came out, and I, especially myself, we proposed that in our context, the most affected by these biggest problems is the young entrepreneurs. That is most of the times rely in our services and rely in our programs to really push themselves to go forward. And in our context, most of our young entrepreneurs is still on informal sector, and they're the one that is affected mostly by the biggest problem. And so for us, this the next question is how often it happened to these users. We said it's in level 3 because it's right now it's in higher level degrees of this thing. And for the fourth question, who is saying how much can the users can is willing to use and willing to spend to solve this problem. So we had a problem responding to that because we were struggling a bit to give an amount of money. So what we did is, me and Purity, we said let's give a score like what we did in the previous question. So we did 3 scores. First of all is that the people is not really ready to spend any money or any value money to solve the problem. Secondly, they are ready, but with some condition. And the third degree is they're ready. Whatever it's happened, they can contribute to solve the problem. So we choose it. For us, it will be two, because there is still another part of the work that the government has to play, and maybe the government, but all the other sector has to play as well to solve the problem. So this is mainly what we discussed. Yes, and I think Purity can add of some of the discussion we had about yeah.
I think you've covered it very comprehensively, Naina. We had a lot of up and down, back and forth, especially with regards to who the user is, asking ourselves the question or justifying at least the answer for relevance with the question, if our YMCA closes, will there be anyone up in arms that it shouldn't close because they are dependent on the Y in a way? And that's in terms of like the community, and also just maybe also challenging ourselves a little bit in terms of what we tie relevance to. Thinking of all the work that has gone into reviving dead capital, thinking about our properties and our facilities and income generation, and are those things the things that cause us to be relevant in the community? Like, should we be focusing in a different direction, or how do we improve that? I think that's all I could add for now.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you for the conversations, and thank you for taking the time. Now, we had another tool. We don't have the time, unfortunately, to get into that tool. The next tool, right now, I feel like we are at a point of pain, because we know or we don't know, and we are struggling with these issues. We have had lots of discussions and thrown lots of ideas, and we are at a point of pain, because that point of pain is now we know the problems. So how do we solve the problems? And I think from what I see from this group, we have seen there are two issues: access and of affordability of, I think it's technology that you guys had mentioned, and then there's the issue of relevance. Built, of course, targeting the youth, but with significant investment by the YMCA. So my proposal is this. I propose that we leave it at this most painful point, because of the issue of time, and also because of the issue of we need to go and probably reflect a bit more on this issue. When we come to the next session of the big idea, we will not go into introducing what the issues are as much as we will go now into the solution. And we will use a tool which, allow me for the next 30 seconds to introduce it. One of the tools is called the opposite thinking tool. I had introduced it in the other group. The opposite thinking tool, I'm just sharing it like now, is this. When we've been talking about these problems, and when we've been talking about the issues that we've talked about, there's a critical assumption that we have been making. When there's the issue of access and affordability of technology, there's an assumption there that we have made about that concept or that domain. What we will do in that session is to describe the opposite of that assumption. So we assume, for example, in our group, we had assumed that for us to be relevant, we need, say, capital, buildings, infrastructure. Our assumption is that we need to be relevant, that our infrastructure will help us to be relevant. But we're supposed to now describe the opposite of this assumption. And for me, the opposite of the assumption is we don't actually need capital or buildings or infrastructure to be relevant. We can be relevant without them. And then then phase 3 will be to describe a new service and offering that is coming out of this opposite. So it's a new service, it's an offering, it's an improvement that is devolved or that is given birth by the opposite of this assumption. So for example, for us, it wasn't, the assumption, the opposite of our assumption will be that we don't actually need capital. So what new services or offerings or improvements can we make in the YMCA that will help us to be relevant? Yeah, for example. The reason why we can't get into this, as you may imagine, this is a very huge process and it will take another day. And this is now when we start now developing the ideas. But personally, as of now, I am happy and content with the problem analysis we have done. The place we have put ourselves within COVID, within the low touch economy, with the description that you can't touch this. And there are certain, we even had another session called Muddy Paddles, which but just feeds into what we've discussed here. And so the next session will be about now, let's build that critical big idea and document it for sale for YMCAs and youth. At this point, I'd like you just to get your feedback on that process before we begin to close. Any feedback? Are you happy with the process that we have gone through?
Yes, of course, Lord.
Yeah, we are.
Okay. Yeah, especially for Priscilla and Hernán, I think this is the first big idea session that you've been part of, and I'm happy to hear about that. I'd like to invite us to keep our calendars open towards the end of next month for us to conclude this process and to develop the big idea, to begin to package it and to begin to find ways of even throwing our money at our idea, because unless this idea is worth money, value and time, it will not be useful. So I'd like to invite us to keep June open, end of June, possibly towards the 22nd of June, a day like today. I'm assuming the second last Friday of the month, to keep it open. And so that we can possibly have even a bit longer session, because this has gone into 2.5 hours. So we can have a bit of a longer session that we can finally thrash these ideas and have a beautiful document that we can share. And I think I'll give it to Nirina also. I see Nirina, your hand is up, and also to conclude the meeting for us.
Yes, thank you, Lloyd. While we are still trying to set our calendar, I just wanted to forward an information that even us at internal level at AAY are not yet, it has not yet communicated. We are tentatively setting the date of the executive committee meeting for the 26th. And 27th of June.
Okay.
So we are trying, actually, that's why we have aligned with the rest of the areas. So we will have to attend 26th of June is the executive committee for, what is it called? Europe. Then 5th of June is for LACA. And then 27th will be ours. And then end of June will be for APAY. So just to indicate that so that we remove it from our calendar.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
But just to find out, Nirina, just by way of conclusion, just from you, how you feel about the process and what we've been able to achieve today. And in essence, I just want to hand over the microphone to you to conclude. Yeah. I think your microphone is muted.
Yes,
Yeah.
sorry. Yes, thank you. You know, the big idea is meant to be a sort of long process, and it's a continued process. And I really appreciate the way it is dealt with. It's what we call in French a very good remue-ménage. Guys, let me help me to translate that. It's something that is really thought-provoking. Let me put it as simple as that. And I think that's what we really need for now. And we appreciate the way the process is led. We appreciate, I think, the way that it is incrementally bring us into the product. Personally, and I think that's also might be everyone's feeling. We just want to rush because we want to have something very quick.
Yeah.
But the way we are led within the process, I think it's very helpful. And I want to again and again appreciate everyone's effort. We are in a turning point where we need really to stop a bit and then think about, assess where we are, and then find the new solution for the new way of engaging into the new normal. And though it is an accelerator, the COVID is an accelerator of this, we still also need to try to give our best to find, the best way for us to respond to that. I particularly appreciate today for the group, the second group, when you guys were bringing on board the relevance of YMCAs in the communities. And it has been always a big question when we said, if the YMCA is closed today, would it be a single person who will raise the hand and say, sorry, we really need that YMCA to be there? This is a very, very good question you put and you brought on board, and I really appreciate that as well. So Lloyd, as you gave me the mic, I think I just need to stop to talk now. Let's conclude, let's close the meeting for now. We have a lot for to think about, and let's just find a way to agree on a new time. But if I can still request from you guys, I think we need still to accelerate a little bit the process. And if we can find the closest date possible. Maybe we cannot agree on here, but I will leave it with you, Lloyd, to propose if we can go or have the two next sessions, if it can be not just a monthly session for now, as we really need to accelerate a bit.
Okay, all right.
That's my request, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So thank you, guys. We will discuss it online for the next date. But thank you for your coming. I would like to release us. It's a Friday. Go home. Go. Okay, if you're still already at home, enjoy your weekend and and let's meet in the soonest time possible. Thank you very much for your time.
Really appreciate
Thank you, Lord.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
And thank you, Lloyd, for bringing us into this process.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Purity. Thanks.
All right, bye-bye. Bye, Brian.
Priscilla.
Bye, everyone.
A pleasure.
Bye.
There is something that we use as NGSs to do, and I think it's a very good way for us to close the session, if everyone can say goodbye in his own language, maternal language.
Do I know my goodbye? Let me say it in Kiswahili. Kwaheri.
Kwaheri. Nyagadogo.
Bye-bye. We actually use the same thing.
Okay, we say Veluma.
Take care.
Veluma.
Bye.
Veluma.
Bye. Bye.